It is time for the Southern California Foreclosure Report. This is one of the only places you'll get up-to-the-minute foreclosure data for Los Angeles, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, Ventura, and San Diego counties. We're going to run through the notices of default, the notices of trustee sale, and real estate owned inventory. Now that the foreclosure moratorium is over and more people are exiting forbearance, we're starting to see the numbers tick up. We're going to show you exactly what this means and whether you should be worried. And stick around to the end where we let you know what a new regulation in California has been changing things for foreclosure properties. Hey there. Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates. We've been helping buyers and sellers and tenants and landlords make the best decisions in this crazy market. Back in the day, we listed bank-owned homes, and it looks like there may be a chance for bank-owned homes to hit the market yet again. So if you're ready to dive into Los Angeles, Orange County, San Bernardino, San Diego, Ventura, and Riverside County foreclosure data, hit that like button. And let's get started. And here we go, diving into the foreclosure data for Southern California. We're going to start with notices of default. As we always mention, this is the first step in the foreclosure process. So it's 120 days after a payment is missed, the notice of default filed. 90 days later, the notice of trustee sale. And 21 days later, the sale can take place. But it usually takes longer than this. And the month-over-month data covers most of 2021. We're going back to February, and we have January and February 2022 to see what trends we're going to find in the data now that the foreclosure moratorium is over and folks are exiting forbearance. And don't forget, if you're a newsletter subscriber, there's two benefits. You get all these charts, you can play with these data, and my head's not in the way. So you don't have to look at me. You can look at the data. After the foreclosure moratorium ended in July of 2021, you can see what happened into August. There was that increase. So we can see all the other counties, there was an increase into just after the foreclosure moratorium ended. And we see in all the counties, we actually see that decrease in December, and that's pretty typical. A lot of lenders won't start the foreclosure process in December because of the holidays, but as you can see here, they pick it up after the first of the year, and that's what happened. And we can see that when you look at the month-over-month data, we are at a peak for most of the counties in Southern California for the notices of default filed. Now we need to put this into context, and we're going to put this into context because while we're at a peak for February 2022, we need to see how this compares to other Februaries to see if this is a danger zone yet. Moving on, the next step is the notice of trustee sale, and we can see a huge increase in the notices of trustee sale that were filed after the foreclosure moratorium ended. And this was low-hanging fruit. I've talked about this before in other content, how these were vacant properties and properties where the notice of default was issued prior to COVID. So they moved very quickly into the notice of trustee sale. And then we see a dip. The low-hanging fruit was gone. And now we have to let the process move forward through the notice of default into the notice of trustee sale for properties after the foreclosure moratorium ended and as they're coming out of forbearance if they're going to go that path. So you can see that we're actually not at a peak in the month-over-month data for notice of trustee sale. We're down a little bit, ticked up in January, came down in February for several of the Southern California counties. And this is it. This is where we get context. And we are comparing now year-over-year data. So we're looking at February. And why do we do these reports in the middle of March? Well, that's usually how long it takes for the data to show up for the previous month. For any closings, it can take up to 2 weeks for it to show up in the public record. So here, let us see the notices of default going back to 2015. And pretty much can't argue 2015 through 2019 were normal years from the standpoint of foreclosures. There wasn't anything crazy going on with the market that would lead to an increase in foreclosures. Then 2020 hit and we saw this big increase. That was actually just before COVID. So February 2020, COVID had not yet affected the data. We did see a spike though, although it's not crazy. Major dip because of the foreclosure moratorium, and then we're back up. See, this is where the context is important. We saw that 391 number for LA, and we saw that that was a dramatic increase in the month-over-month data. But when you put it in historical perspective, we're still at a relatively normal level, and you see this when you get your email newsletter and you go ahead and take a look at the data, you'll see that that's very similar for the different counties. You can see in the data that we're at normal levels of foreclosures. So massive dip, and now we're up. And even more context, you know I love context, and we're going to go ahead and include 2011 because that's about as far back as we can go before data sunsets. And you can see that the numbers are very low compared to where they were in 2011, and definitely they were higher before 2011. We're not at risk of a major wave of foreclosures yet because we're not seeing the numbers. We're not seeing this first step showing huge numbers that we should be worried about yet. So here we are with our context. You compare it to years past. You can see that the notice of trustee sale that we are way down if you compare it to 2015, 2016. And how about compare it to 2011? Holy smokes, we're at less than a tenth of the way it was in 2011 for notice of trustee sale. You can see global financial crisis, 2011, lots of folks losing their homes and wave of foreclosures, lots of inventory. And you can see where we are today. We are getting back to more normal levels. And of course, we're going to continue to release these monthly reports so we can see that if we get to a point where we're exceeding normal levels, if we continue to see the data moving up, then we'll know we could potentially be in trouble coming up here soon. Moving into the REOs, the real estate owned, these are the properties that go back to the lender. You could technically call these foreclosed homes because the process is over and they're now back at the lender. Lender's going to prepare them for sale in the majority of cases. It has been trending down significantly from 2015 into 2022. Now, the other important thing to note is we're still early in the release from the foreclosure moratorium and people coming out of forbearance. So a lot of those folks have not gotten far enough into the process to potentially be foreclosed on. But I want to show you two things. One is, let's put it into context. It's terrible when you see these numbers, the number of folks that lost their homes, and this was people living in their homes, owner occupants, this was vacant properties, this was tenant occupied properties. I listed foreclosed homes. I'd knock on the door. Back then, tenants didn't always know that their landlord wasn't paying. Now there's different procedures and processes that make it easier for tenants to know, but back then they didn't. These people were paying their rent in many cases to landlords who were just pocketing the money. Very sad times back then, and you can see that dramatic drop. So we don't have a wave. We don't have to worry. There's definitely not enough inventory coming that's even going to make a dent or even be noticeable in the market, at least right now. I said two things. So one was put it into context. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is what's happening to properties at auction. And you can see it in the data here, and we'll continue to see this. Because there's no inventory, anything that makes it to the step of the trustee sale is being purchased by investors and is not necessarily going back to the bank. So you can see very small numbers. So in, for example, Orange County in February, we didn't have a single property go back to the bank. Now, some of those may have been foreclosed on and went to investors who are third parties. And one more thing to add to this, the process of buying homes at trustee sale has changed dramatically. We released a video on SB 1079. Make sure you check that out. I'll link it up above. What it allows, and I won't go into it here because it's complicated, you really should watch the video. It allows owner occupants to buy it after trustee sale. So that's changing the process as well. And because a property has been foreclosed on and maybe gone back to the bank, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay back at the bank. An owner occupant can bid on it. So make sure you check out that video to see. That's also why we're seeing lower numbers. It's taking a little longer to foreclose because you got to get through the SB 1079 process as well. And if you're interested in purchasing a foreclosure, we have a link below where you can find all the foreclosure properties in Southern California for single family and multifamily as they hit the market. Additionally, if you're interested in tracking foreclosures in California or beyond, we have a link below to foreclosure.com. And make sure you subscribe to our channel because we are going to be comparing two of the top foreclosure search websites. Let us know in the comments below where you think foreclosures are headed and whether we should be worried. We want to know what you think about the foreclosure market. Join over 2,000 others in subscribing to our email newsletter so you know the latest on foreclosures and everything else going on in Southern California for the real estate market. And make sure you check out this SB 1079 video so you understand how things have changed for the auction process for foreclosures. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates, and we want to hear from you.